So we'll start with a little bit of breath work, and it's more so gentle awareness than anything. We're not going to do anything too crazy, nothing too intense. We just want to bring in some awareness into the body and become ready to receive. So, and we're not even going to have background music because that's how I'm rolling today. So you can just close your eyes as you're ready. Okay. And just feeling into the body, noticing the areas where there's tension. Where is it tight and where is the weight sitting in your body? As you breathe in, take the breath into that spot. If it's in the back of your neck, take the breath into the back of the neck. And as you breathe out, relax that space where it's feeling tight. Our bodies can carry a lot of tension for a lot of different reasons. Sometimes because we're holding on to stuff. Sometimes because we're trying to control things. Sometimes because we haven't been listening to ourselves to slow down or to notice. Breathing in. This time as we breathe in, I want you to breathe in a third of the way and hold it in your chest space. So we're going to go hold, breathe out a little bit, and then breathe down into the belly more. And hold in the belly. Now as we go to breathe out, imagine that you're scooping the energy stuck down in your belly up and out. It might feel like champagne bubbles. Breathe in again to the chest. Hold in the chest. Half a breath out. Top up. Down into the lower belly, sacral area. If you need to sway or rotate, you can. And just feel that bubbling and out. All right, we're going to do that 2 more times. It might feel a little weird, and if you can't match it exactly to my prompts, just do what feels comfortable to your body. Breathing in. Hold. Breathe out. Little breath in, down into the belly. Scooping up that stuck energy down here. Releasing it out. All right. I'm going to do it one more time. Breathe in. Into the chest. Breathe out. Breathe in again, down into the belly. Hold, scooping it up, and release. Okay, and as we come back to awareness, just acknowledging this experience in our body, whether it feels foreign or whether it feels calm. And noticing what it is that we're carrying around, and really the burden that we feel on ourselves right now. Because many of you will be going through, and I'm talking to the people that are going to be watching the replay as well, many of you will be going through this like crazy time of year, right? It's just busy. Everything's busy, everything's full on, and it's the time that women burn out the most. And so just acknowledging what is going on for you right now. Um, and we're going to cover today really what like BRB is covering in all of the other sessions, but we're also going to like give you a session enough that if this is the only session you do, that's cool too, because it gives you enough to work with if you want to just have this one. So I'll start off by telling you a little bit of a story about boundaries and how it happened for me. For me, with my kids, I started off on this like gentle parenting route, and I didn't realize that gentle parenting really did not work with my neurodivergent child. Um, with my neurodivergent child, he really needed a clear yes and no and a clear black and white. Welcome if you're just joining. I'm just giving a little bit of a background story. And so I was really frustrated with him because he would not follow my boundary. If I said no, no did not mean no to him. It meant maybe not. Maybe don't do that. Maybe don't do that. And this really like fractured our relationship together because I would be really on his case of like, I told you not to do that. And he'd be like, what I realized as time went on was that I actually didn't have boundaries with him. And my no didn't mean no. And it wasn't just with him that my no didn't mean no. My no didn't mean no with everyone. And so as I started to realize this, I had to get to work. And it was kind of putting my kids in a school environment where they are quite structured and routine made me realize that actually my children needed structure and routine more than I was giving them. And I had always resisted that. I'd resisted like giving structure and routine because I don't like structure and routine. I don't like, well, I thought I didn't. I don't like um, that kind of approach. But what I realized was that my nervous system was like really wired for chaos. And so I was avoiding having structure and routine and boundaries because one, my childhood had taught me that boundaries were really limiting and really strict, and there was no space to be myself and to have my own voice and to have authenticity. And I didn't want to impose that on my own children. And so I was really nervous about having a yes and a no and that being my boundary. And I didn't know how to do it without being a dickhead. And so I just avoided it altogether. And then the second thing was that I felt like I didn't realize that the level of chaos and spontaneity was my own issue and my own trauma of accepting that as normal. And that actually to like slow things down and have a routine, and it's not like really strict, but like to have a process to things is healthy, and children needed that and my kids needed that from me. And so I kept blaming my kids for this like chaotic home and like, oh, it's just because he's ADHD and he's autistic and that's why it's chaotic. And yes, there's complexities that come to our home from that. But I think the main thing was that I didn't know how to build a boundary, use a boundary, or hold a boundary. And so I would always, uh, one day the boundary is here, and 3 days later the boundary is here. And then I would say, oh, what works for us on a Monday won't work for us on a Wednesday because my child's neurodivergent. But actually, what it was that I was not consistent enough for the boundary to be seen as a boundary. It was just kind of like a shifting goalpost all the time. And so in like learning these boundaries with my kids, became my training ground really to realize how terrible I was at boundaries with other people. And so I went through a couple of like really crappy short-term dating experiences with people and realized, oh my gosh, they're walking all over me and I'm letting them because I don't know how to say enough. And I don't respect myself enough. And I don't have enough self-love within myself and enough courage to say, I'm not standing for this enough. And so I'm going to teach you today like an overview of how we can build real boundaries that that we can implement. So today is about learning, like what is a boundary? We're going to learn like what that is. And then over the next 3 sessions, it'll be about building boundaries. And we're going to look at like more intricately, how do we build a boundary and what does that look like for you? Because it's going to be different for everyone depending on what you're going through, what's happening in life, etc. And then how do we hold a boundary? It's really easy to like have this great idea of like, I'm not going to respond to texts after 8 p.m. But how do we implement that and like what does that look like in our lives? And so we're going to go over that on that bit. And then the use is about how do we keep reviewing the boundaries we have, right? Because our lives are always changing. The seasons change, what happens changing, our energy levels change. So we don't want to have like these, and this is what I didn't understand about boundaries, is like we don't want to have these like rigid things that never move with us. If we move, they can move with us. And so learning that we can adapt things, we can shift things. But the more we use them, the better we become at learning what works for us. So you see how we like loop back, and it's a feedback loop. And so, yeah, these are just two. So the first stage in building is to break up with shitty boundaries. And I had lots of shitty boundaries. I I used to let people talk to me in really shitty ways. And this is the part where in the building stage, it's just about starting to notice what is it in my life that I'm allowing? What is it in my life that my children are doing to me that really ticks me off? What is it about the way that my partner talks to me when he comes home from work, or when shit hits the fan, that I really dislike? And what do I want to do about it? And is there anything I can do about it? And we're going to make this about us and our journey, because it's really easy in life and in conflict and when we're burning out, to blame the external circumstances. My child's neurodivergent. It's Christmas and there's a lot on my plate. My family just have no emotional respect for me. Those kinds of things. Those might be factors, but we want to change the internal system of ourselves to deal with those better. And so when we look at changing and validating ourselves through the process, that's the part where we're going to learn about holding a boundary. What does it mean to look at what's coming up for us and how we can honor ourselves in that? And for many of us that haven't learnt boundaries and have just learned to always say yes and always take on stuff and be the good mum, the good woman, the good friend, that you just keep saying yes to all these things and you think, oh my God, the like, when is the washing pile going to end? But a lot of that comes from this internal programming that we have, that like performance and how we perform is like how we earn love and how we're respected. And so it's a lot about the internal dialogue that we have. And so we want to work to start to change that internal dialogue a little bit, where you feel like, okay, I get that. I'm feeling overwhelmed and someone else has asked me to take on another task. Am I a bad person if I say no to that task? Probably not. Do I feel like I'm a bad person if I say no? Yeah. Okay. Like, let's just talk ourselves through that internally. Why do I feel like a bad person? What's that about? So we're going to like really work on that bit there. And then with the using, it's about knowing what it is that you have to lose if you don't use boundaries and what it is you have to gain if you do. So like if you learn to use boundaries, you'll have more time for yourself. You'll have more time for your family. You have more energy. You stop leaking your energy to people that don't deserve it. And something I've had to learn in recent times as I'm growing, like as a person and in my business, is like a lot of people will say that they want healing and a lot of people will say that they want help. But when you put the job back onto them or the responsibility back onto them, they don't want to do that. They want a quick fix. Everyone wants a quick fix. That's why we have pharmaceuticals, or not, that's not why, sorry. But that's like a lot of Western medicine, right, is built on the quick fix. And it doesn't actually get to the root of the issue. And it's the same with talk therapy, and it's the same with so many of our like traditional route of way of doing things, is about the quick fix. And so when we learn boundaries, then we can also put what's not ours back onto the other person, what's not our burden to carry. And I'm not sure, I'm guessing that you guys have downloaded the little black book, which has the 15 scripts in it. But those are really great insight into like a starting point for using sentences for people when you don't know what to say. Because if you're like me, you'll be like, they asked me to do this and I didn't know what to say. Like, how do I say no without hurting them? How do I say no without making them feel embarrassed? How do I end this conversation that's getting really uncomfortable for me? And I'll share a story about my family. So in my family, I was estranged from my family for 7 years after I came out as gay, and I didn't have any contact with them, like maybe, I don't know, once a year. And it was always really awkward and uncomfortable. And then when my partner died by suicide, my family came back into my orbit. And it was in that moment when they came back in my life, I realized, holy shit, they have no boundaries. There's no limit. Like, they will just step into whatever it is and think that all information is like open access, like a Cochrane database of like everyone's knowledge of information all on display for each other. And I realized this is why I don't have emotional boundaries, because it's been so normalized in our family that everything is open access, and everyone's allowed to weigh in their opinion, and everyone's allowed to say what they think. And I had to learn that, like, so my family have a different opinion about my children. Like, they don't believe necessarily that my son's autistic, ADHD. And that's fine. If they don't believe that, that doesn't bother me. But when it does bother me is when they start to tell me how to parent based on their belief, okay? And so I had to put a boundary in line with my sister-in-laws are lovely people. But I just had to say, look, I don't come at you about how I think you should parent your children. You do methods with your children that I don't agree with. But I never comment on that. They're your children. So I would really appreciate it if you just don't comment on how I'm dealing with my children. Like, we can talk about all the other things, but like, that is one topic that's off limits for me. And you know what? Because I was so scared to say it. Like, when I was going to say it, I was trembling and I was like anxious. And this is the thing too, is that sometimes in our minds we make it up to be so much harder and so much worse than it is, because truthfully, she received it really well. And I haven't even had to reiterate the boundary thing with her about it ever again. It was like I said it once and she respected it. And so this is the thing too, is like, obviously it's not always going to go that way. People aren't always going to respect our boundary right off the bat, and it depends who we're dealing with. But sometimes we make it so much worse for ourselves in our mind than the reality. And we worry about, what if they say this and what if they say that, that we get ourselves stuck, and the limitation is ourselves. It's not that they're a bad person and they, oh, I could never say that to them, they would just like fly off the handle. No. Why? Like, let's go. Worst case scenario. What are they going to do? Okay. And this is what we're going to go over more in the hold phase of like all the scenarios and the steps that you can kind of do to keep yourself feeling safe. So it's about validating yourself in the process and making your body feel safe. Any questions? Am I going too quick? Cool. Okay, so when we're looking at what are boundaries, it's about our limits. So What is it that we have to lose? What is it that we have to gain? Um, and I used to think like boundaries, well, people would say like you need better boundaries. And I was like, what are you talking about? Because if you've never seen something role modeled, how are you supposed to know? It's like if someone tells you like to just go in the kitchen and cook dinner, but all you've ever been shown how to do is butter bread. Like, how are you supposed to know what to do? How are you supposed to feed everyone when all you know how to do is butter bread? And so I did like start to watch a lot of YouTube information of like what is boundaries and what does that look like, and like what does an avoidant behavior look like, because that was one of my patterns, was that I would avoid because, oh, it's too hard for me, I can't deal with that, I conflict freaks me out, and I would avoid. And that touched on a bit of the issue of like it taught me a little bit around boundaries, but what it didn't do is give me the tools. And so I could logic and understand why I don't have boundaries. And I could have spent all, yeah, going over about how it was my childhood and I didn't have people to teach me. And if only I had had this, and like I'm avoidant because that's what I've learned. That still doesn't get me from A to B. It still doesn't stop me from doing that pattern. And so, like, what is it that we need to do to stop doing the pattern? We're going to go over that in the next slide. But really looking at a boundary is something that you put in place to protect yourself or someone else, or as a line, like a line in the sand. And sometimes, even now, when I'm feeling uncomfortable with the way something's going with someone, I'll just visually in my mind think of like a line and go, okay, what line is there? What is it that I want to put there? Do I need to say anything, or is it just a physical thing? Sometimes a boundary can be like, I'm just going to take a step back. Okay, you're really in my bubble. I'm just going to take a step back. So it's not always like a verbal thing. It can be a like implied physical thing. It can be an emotional boundary. It can be, um, yeah, those kinds of boundaries as well. Like a practice, a spiritual practice could be your boundary. Some people might say a prayer or something like that. That would be like a spiritual boundary of something you do to keep yourself safe or to keep yourself nurtured. So I want you to just think about, like, in your own life, something that's like coming up for you. And we'll have question time at the end if you guys want some like personalized questions answered. And just think about, like, in your life, something that's just like really pissing you off. And like that thing that like you just wish if you had a magic wand you could fix it. Um, or you can do the opposite way and think about like uh, what would it feel like to have a really great life? What would it feel like to like not feel like you're overgiving and you're overburdened? And can you see a gap there in your mind of, this is like the end point I would like to get to, but like where in that process is there maybe some boundaries missing? So I'll give you an example. Yesterday we went through the KFC drive-through because we had a late meeting and I didn't get home. We didn't leave that until like 5, and I had a meeting at 8 again, so I had to just like do dinner real quick. So I was like, you know what, we're gonna go through KFC. We go through KFC, we go to get the snack boxes. The snack box comes in the window, and I kid you not, it's like salt flying out of it. Like it's way oversalted. And I look at it and I'm like, the fuck? I said it out loud. I was like, oh, what the fuck? And then like, mind you, it's 5:30, right? So there's like cars bumper to bumper. We already sat in the queue for 20 minutes. I know that we've got to get home. I've got to get them bath, showered, ready, and down before my 8 o'clock meeting. And I'm just like, oh my God, I like a simple thing. You've just like screwed it up for me. That's fine. We go back round. We're in the queue. And I just said to the guy at the count at the window, look, dude, you're going to have to give me a replacement of that because that was just like insanely oversalted. And he's like, yeah, no, cool, sweet, we'll do that. And now, there in that moment, in the past, I would have been way too pussy ass to do that. I would not have done that. I would have been like, we're just gonna make do with what we have, right? Because I was a nice girl. I'm not gonna I wouldn't have confronted him because I was a nice girl and like, oh, they wouldn't have meant to oversalt it. No, I'm the customer, I've paid for it. I expect it to be in a certain condition. If it's not, I'm gonna return it. And this is like my boundary of I've paid for a service. I expect a certain thing in return, and if it's not up to my standard, I am within my rights to bring it back to your window. Well, dude, we get to the second window. They hand me this big bag of like food, and I'm like, oh, is this for me? He's like, yeah, yeah. I'm like, okay, well, you may as well have this. And I like, kind of like, not hiff, but I'm not, if you know me, I'm not like super gracious, graciously movement. I don't move graciously. So it's kind of like, and he says, what's with this? And I said, it's rubbish. And he says, huh? I said, it's rubbish. No one can eat that. It's got so much salt in it. He just looked confused. I don't know what happened, but they gave us the wrong bag. Like in this bag had like a burger, some wicked wings, some gravy and stuff. And I like didn't check before I drove off. And I get like outside of the line and I look in the bag and I'm like, oh my fucking God. And Nehemiah's like, what, mommy? I said, they got it wrong again. And I kid you not, I went to go back around and Nehemiah goes, mummy, please no, mummy. So we left and like made do with what we had. But the thing that made me laugh was that when we were coming home, Nehemiah, like, because I'm free with my language, okay, I swear. It might be spiritual, but I swear. He goes, Mum, those motherfuckers fucked up, hey? And I said, yeah, they did, but we probably shouldn't talk about people like that. So, like this is kind of an entwine of like boundaries as well as like role modeling, right? Because I'm role modeling to my children that it's like okay to talk about like someone that's given you a service like that. I just role modeled to them like because I looked at it and I was like, oh, those motherfuckers. Like so he literally was just repeating me. Um and so this is the thing is like when we keep repeating a pattern over and over and over and like, he's like, please, mum, not through the drive-through again. We've been sitting in here for 30 minutes now. Um, when we keep role modeling a certain pattern, whether that's taking on tasks over and over again, or whether that's giving out money to the person that keeps asking for a loan, or whatever it is, we're role modeling to them that we're okay with that. And are we okay with that? How's that actually feeling for us? And then we get shitty that they're still asking us for money. What? You're asking for another loan? And then when we get shitty at them and we respond of like, I don't know why you need money. What are you spending it on? They're like, whoa, I just asked for a loan. Like, why are you mad at me now? Like, you've been enabling this process for how long? Why are you mad at me now? And this is why like boundaries, knowing our boundaries is so key because having these whatever we're role modeling to everyone else is going to affect the way that people treat us. And we can sit here all day and blame everyone else and say like, if only they didn't talk to me like that, if only they didn't do this, if only they didn't do that, like I would have been a fucking bomb ass mom if my kids didn't like throw food and jump on the table and yell and scream. But the truth is that like they're kids and they need boundaries and it's my job to do that. So like I can keep either blaming them and saying like they're crazy, or I could go, I need to do something about this issue. And so that's kind of what BRB is about as well. How are we going? How's everyone feeling? Cool. Any questions? You can drop any questions in the chat as well. And if you want, maybe like a limit that you are sort of building. Yeah, Andrea, do you want me to take you off mute? Oh, no. Oh, you're just nose scratching. Okay, let's go. So let me talk about, I'll just see how we're doing for time. Oh, cool. Got a little bit of time still. You know what I just realized is I don't even think I hit record. Surely I hit record.
Yeah, when I
Let
came
me
on, it
just
did
see.
say it's
Oh,
on
I
record.
did hit record. That's
Yeah.
good. I was like, because this is like unrepeatable. This is how I teach too. Like I won't be able to reteach the same thing twice. So when we're looking at boundaries, okay, and we apply it to the inner child, so with the inner child, when we are a child, we are perceiving the whole world around us of what's going on, okay? And we perceive that and we take on that information and we take that on as normal. So in the corner here, you'll see I have child, pardon me, sorry, and then experience and then belief. So what happens is as a child, we have an experience, and then that experience we try and make it make sense, and that becomes our belief. And we use that as our belief until basically we update it, or until we go, this doesn't fit for me anymore. I don't I don't believe that anymore. So an example like of this would be, as a child, I grew up being taught that like heaven and hell was real, and that like if I lived a life of sin, I would go to hell. And what this created for me, the experience, like it got really ingrained in me, okay? And so I had to also be a good person in order to go to heaven, which meant that I was always striving to be a good person. And then I left the church and I left like Christianity, and I went out and I did my own life and I had my own family, etc. But what I didn't realize was I was still carrying a lot of the beliefs about having to be a good girl, having to be a good person. And of course, we want to be good people, but not to the detriment of ourselves. And what this meant was that I could not be honest with myself, because I was so fixated on this belief of being a good person that seeing that I wasn't a good person was really confronting, and I didn't want to see that. Like seeing the fact that, I'll give you an example of like the fact that I love revenge, like, and my students know this. Like I can't hide the fact that like I love a good revenge plot, okay? I just love it. It's one of my shadow aspects, and I used to, I'm not kidding, I used to sit there and plot the ways that like I could get revenge on this person. Like I'm crazy. But then if I was confronted about that, because I was like, this is me being honest now, but back then I wasn't honest, I would have been like, no, I would never. I'm a good person. I would never want to have revenge on me. But that's because I was still carrying this belief that I had to be a good person in order to be of value. And once we can connect the three, like the three aspects, the child, the experience, and the belief, and we can kind of connect, okay, that's where that belief came from, then we can change the belief. So with children, we're constantly seeing experiences. Like an example would be with a client. She's potentially like, she thinks that, hang on, let me just think really a little more carefully on this one. I'll just bring it back to myself. Um, so if you've got this idea, okay, that, so my mum, right, she had a lot of children. I'm the eldest of seven. And so she was always really busy with the children, the younger ones, because when you're 7 and you've got 3 younger siblings, you're kind of the least of the priority. So what happens? You become incredibly capable, you become incredibly resilient, and you're really fucking good at mothering everyone and being bossy. And so these were like 3 traits that I carried within myself that I hated for a long time because I felt like um, they weren't anything to be proud of. And they were like a byproduct of an environment that I wish that I hadn't had. Now I can own them and like love those about me. But the experience that experience of being the eldest of all these children, like, and not having an adult to talk about how I was feeling of like, okay, you feel like you're not important. I took on the belief that I wasn't important. And unless I was doing something to prove myself to someone, then I wasn't worth loving. And unless I was like giving something of value, then I wasn't worth valuing. And so once I could like spot the belief that my child experience had created, I could see, oh my God, this is where we're going wrong with like not having boundaries. Is like, I'm trying to prove to everyone that I am worth loving. And I haven't even like taken the step of like realizing to myself that I'm worth loving. And I'm trying like I'm reliving this childhood pattern of mine. And I'm recreating it as an adult by choosing all these people that are saying, oh wow, Becky, you're so capable. Oh wow, Becky, you're so resilient. Like I said to my nan once, I was like, if one more motherfucker tells me that like I'm so capable, I'm gonna like yell at them. Because I don't want to be capable. Actually, I want someone to step up and do shit for me. And like that was the beginning of the end, right? Is spotting the pattern. So that's like a key takeaway for today is spotting the pattern that is like getting you to create. And we're going to go into that now. Any questions on that before I move on? No? Cool. So when we talk about our mind and in psychology, right, we often in psychology will just like target one aspect, whether that's the feeling or the thinking. But I like to use an approach was like fourth way approach by a man whose name was Gurdjieff. And he created the fourth way to enlightenment is like his whole life's work. So there's like 3 ways to enlightenment. Like there's the way of the yogi, which is like through extreme pain and extreme dedication to physical awakening of the body, which then awakens the spirit is the idea. Then there's the awakening, or then there's the method of the fakir or the like priest man who's like trained and he gets taught all of the knowledge and then becomes like this enlightened being. Or there was the way of the yoga, the fakir, and the oh my gosh, of course I can't remember it now. Um, you know what? I can't even remember it, and I'm just gonna own that I can't remember it. And then there's a third way, which is like, oh, the way of the monk. That's what it was. The way of the monk, where you literally renounce the whole world, like the world, and you go so insular and like leaving behind everything else that you become enlightened in that way by like denying yourself of all of the worldly possessions, and through that you become enlightened. And then there's the fourth way, which is the way of studying and understanding self and the mind, and studying and understanding the way that we work is very like mechanical. And when we can observe that, we start to notice all the little things and the patterns we do and the way we act. And then we can start to become enlightened about who we are and what we carry. So so one way to do it is like to split the mind into four, but we'll start with three. The intellectual mind. So that's the voice in your head that's always telling you a lot of logic, Oh, but if you did that, then this would happen. If you do that, then this will happen. You need to make sure that you've put the bin out before roadside pickup tomorrow. Da 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 da. If you don't, this will happen. Da 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 da. That mind. That mind that just like goes and goes and goes, and there's no stopping it. That's often the intellectual mind, and it's usually the most dominant mind in your psyche. Then we have the instinctive mind, which I believe is like our fight, flight, freeze response. But it's also like that feeling, you can kind of know something's not quite right in your body. You feel it. And so if this is very highly tuned to chaos, that'll be dominating a lot, right? If that instinctive mind, when you were the wiring when you were a child, is saying that this is normal, like this chaos and this confusion is normal, then anytime that there's calm, your instinctive mind will go, something's not right. Something's not right. And so it'll feel, and it's not that it's not right, it's that your body is made to pick up the slightest signal of what's the word I'm looking for? Come on. Risk, right? And if you think about, like, a mother is very instinctive in that when she's first had her baby, she wants her baby near to her. And if you think about that from like a biological perspective, if the bear's coming to chase you, you want to be able to grab your baby and run. If a war party's coming to raid you, you want to be able to grab your baby and run. So like this instinctive is like a very animal kind of like programming, but it can be distorted depending on like the upbringing we've had and the environments that we've been exposed to. And then there's like the intuitive mind, okay? And this is like that thing of like, I don't know why I feel like this, but I know that I have to. Or like sometimes it can be like a little quiet voice that you go, no, this job opportunity is not for you. But your intellectual mind overtalks that and goes, well, if you don't take the job, how blah, 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 blah. And so often the intuitive mind is like really squashed out of us. And we're functioning from only intellectual and sometimes feeling. But when the intellectual mind is like da 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 all the time, it really burns our energy. This is where we're leaking so much energy. And so I like to think of it as like, on your phone when all the apps are open and it's like in the background, all those apps are like draining the battery. And so just starting to shut down some of the apps and figure out like, where is it what part of my mind am I in? And just starting to embrace the more intuitive mind. Why do we need to intellectualize it? Why do we need to try and understand the reason that my mother makes me feel like I'm insane when I think she's insane? Why do I need to try and understand that? Why can't I just see it for what it is and be like, okay, that's how I feel about it. Instinctively, it doesn't feel safe to me. Intuitively, I know that like something's off here. But intellectually, I'm gaslighting myself and telling myself that like I just need to be a better daughter. I just need to do more for her. I just need to show up better. And so we're like at war with the other two parts of us. And then we wonder why we're burnt out. And we're burnt out because we're constantly at war within ourselves. But we're going to blame everyone else. So I'm going to teach you a technique right now that all my students that have ever learned it love. And Andrea, you've done this one before. And this is like, I teach this in the 30-day reset, which I feel like this one tool is the starting point for all growth. Like once you know how to do it, you'll realize that you're starting to do it and you don't realize that you're doing it. And it's then that you can really start to make the shift and the changes that you need to make. So just close your eyes for a minute, and you'll be able to do this with your eyes open eventually, but just close down your eyes for a moment. I'm going to take a couple sips of water. You know, I used to think that I wouldn't be able to talk for like 30 minutes. Now just give me the mic, I'll go for 8 hours. Okay. And just feel, as you feel your body, feel into what little chatter is there. What are the voices in your head that you're hearing? Do they have a sort of twang to them? Do they have quite a harsh tone to them? Is there one that's quite critical? And just meeting with that voice right now, just welcome it and say, hey, I didn't know that you're here, but you've been running my life really hardcore. And we're gonna become more conscious of you now. I'm gonna start to observe when you pop up. And so what we're going to practice over the next few days is to observe, to see what it is, which version of the mind is talking. Is this my intellectual? Is this my instinctive? Or is this my intuitive? And which one is the loudest? And just start getting really clear on who's the loudest and what are they loud for. And as we start to observe, what we start to realize is there's so many different voices in our head. Don't tell the psychiatrist that, because they'll say you're psychotic. But there's the lot, you can open your eyes now. There's a lot of voices in our head, and they are always going. Well, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I think there's a lot of voices in the head. And we don't acknowledge them. And then we're so tired because we got voices in our head, we've got things in our faces, we've got children like talking a million miles an hour, we've got ads in our face, noise, like there's so much going on all the time. And so the simple step of just like realizing what's the internal chatter, what's going on, let's observe that and let's just see what's going on there with that. Get curious about it rather than shutting it down. Just start to explore it. What do you want about today? And then the other secret for observation is about getting really compassionate towards those voices and just seeing it without judgment. You don't want to change it, okay? We're not in the changing stage. We're just in the noticing and observing stage. We're just in that space of, I didn't know I thought like that. I didn't know that. Didn't know that my internal voice was such a bitch. She's mean. But then like we're not judging that, we're not changing that, we're just starting to notice it. And as we notice it more, what we'll notice is that things get clearer and your energy gets better because you're not having like 15 apps open in the background. So I really love this technique. Andrea, can you put in the chat if I've missed anything on covering the observation stage? I feel like there was an aspect to it that I'm missing, but maybe it's not for today. So yeah, when I'm talking about observing, it's about what it means to see and hold yourself. And for so many of us, especially if we had childhoods where we felt emotionally neglected or emotionally rejected, it's really hard to know, who are we? What does it feel like to see and hold ourselves? And where's it our responsibility to show up for ourselves? Because, like I said, when you're trying to prove to yourself that you are the good girl, or that you are the capable one, or that you should know better, then you will keep putting yourself or allowing yourself in situations where that keeps happening to you. And so it's your responsibility, no one else's, your responsibility to show up and say, okay, I see what I'm doing to myself and it's not kind. It's not fair. And I want to, and like this can be very confronting. When I did it with myself and I had to realize that I stayed in domestic violence because I was too afraid to speak my truth, and I was too afraid to implement my boundaries, so I just stayed in a really toxic situation and exposed my kids to like really toxic shit. It's really hard to not feel really angry at yourself, but we're not going to do that. We're going to say, okay, that was then, this is now, and I forgive you for those that what you chose then, I know you wouldn't choose that now. So, like, I'm going to forgive you for that because it's my responsibility to show up for myself. I'm not going to spend the next decade of my life hauling myself over the coals because I let someone that was shitty and unsafe around my children. I'm not going to do that. It's not going to serve them and it's not going to serve me. I'm going to say, okay, that was real dumb. Let's not do that again. Because no therapist, no matter how many therapists I go to, that are going to talk to me about narcissists and they're going to talk to me about abusers and they're going to talk to me about all that shit, that doesn't change the fact that I felt like I wasn't deserving of more. And so I settled for that. They're not going to change that belief in me. Only I can change that belief in me. So it's my responsibility to show up for myself. And it's your responsibility to show up for yourself. So I want to leave some space for questions at the end. Let me just check. Oh yeah, cool. Okay. So we've got here, when we're looking at the build, hold, use kind of realm, I feel like I won't go too deep. I was going to go quite deeply into this, but actually I feel like I've come in deeply with a lot. Oh, I should, did you say? Yeah. No, I feel like this is, I don't want to go too deeply into this. Yeah. Okay, so but there is like the three aspects that we're covering in the workshop I've created. Um, and all my workshops now are like backed on a certain system that I've learned from my teacher that I find works for me and really helps with figuring it out. Um, but yeah, we'll just skip past that because I feel like I explained that stuff. So I guess in the learn stage where you're at now, and whether you like go away and this like feeds you, this session keeps feeding you for like 6 months or 3 months or like whatever, like you don't have to do anything after this other than like just keep going over what's relevant for you, like keep observing, keep learning. If you want to come back for more, I'd love to have you along for the ride, but I don't want to overwhelm anyone either. It's like a crazy time of year, but I wanted this information to be available to people. But it's like in this learn phase, we're asking, where are you lacking? Is it in your energy? Is it in your support? Is it in your financials? Where are you lacking? And where is there room for change with that? And what do you have to lose or gain right now? Um, really using those scripts, if you've got like over the next month, if you've got tricky family dynamics, or you've got tricky partner dynamics, you've got tricky financials, using those scripts will really help you. And just knowing like you don't have to provide anyone an explanation. And I know that's so easy to say and it feels so hard to do. But this is the path of spirituality. It's like everything is easy to know, everything is hard to apply. We can know something, but to like live it and do it, those are two separate things. And like my mission and like right now in life is to make spirituality easy for people to like learn and grasp and do, because there's been enough of this like escape your reality, feel outside of this ether, travel to another realm, but it's not getting anyone any like traction in life. People still feel stuck, people still are unhappy in their jobs and their lives and their marriages. Like, let's just change it up because that's not working. So yeah, I will just, if you do want to carry on, the dates are here, but I will send them out in the emails as well. And I will also send this replay, which you will be able to watch. I'm going to upload this one to YouTube, so you will be able to go back to it at any point. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much our session for today. If you have any questions, we can do a case study or like if there's anything you want guidance on, obviously keeping in mind that it's recorded. So if you want to introduce yourself with a different name, we can do that too, except that you are on the screen. So I've still got to work out the limitation around that. As my teacher says, like limitation creates style. Yeah, but if anyone has a question or anything, they can just pop their hand up and I can take you off mute. No? Yes? No? Okay, did that work for you? There we go.
All right. Could you kind of give me like a bit more rundown of what the these next sessions are? Like just a short kind of rundown of what's involved.
Yeah, sure. Let me just pull up my phone so that I don't like, because I've got all my layout here. Okay, so in the next session, which is build boundaries, we're going to look at basically how do we build boundaries and what that's going to look like for you. So taking into consideration like where are you lacking? What is it that you're struggling with right now? What are like the limitations for you or like the barriers to you having boundaries? And we're going to explore that in more detail. So we're going to look at yeah, I've got like a framework that we'll work through of like where you're getting stuck and having boundaries, and we will kind of like troubleshoot with that. Then we'll look at breaking up with your bad boundaries. So like what is it that you keep doing over and over, and how to implement a strategy to kind of end that. And then we're gonna pick like one area or one thing to like work on all together, but like individually, but like we're all going to be working on that one thing through the other sessions. So it's giving like a really physical, practical approach to trying it out, if that makes sense. And so by the end of that, you should be able to have insight into what shitty boundaries you have that need to stop, and what it means to be able to build new ones and what those are going to look like for you. And then the next session is holding your boundaries. So that's the one at 1 p.m. I had to change that time. So that's all the others are at 11, but that one's at 1. And that's about looking at your uh, follow through. So you might build your boundary, but like, how are you using it? How are you having it function? And do you know how to do that? So we're going to look at how to stop yourself from tapping out of using it. Because and all the ways that you trick yourself out of not using it or using it. And then making sure that we learning how to validate yourself through the process. And I'll teach you guys how to do EFT, which is emotional freedom technique. It's a type of tapping that works really great for trauma release, but also like body awareness and holding calm, like introducing calm to the body, and as well as some breath work as well in that session. And then the final session, we'll like recap on your plan and like what you're holding, and then like take a case study or two of things people might want to like kind of go into a little bit deeper, but also looking at things to do when people don't respect your boundaries and troubleshooting there, making sure that you understand how to celebrate yourself when you've got it right and how to be compassionate to yourself when you haven't got it right, and like what you can do there. And from that one, you should be able to, by the time we've done all three, you should be able to like, that's why it's called build, use, hold. You should be able to build boundaries, use them, and then hold them. Even depending, like, regardless of the response you get from people. So if you get a bad response, I'm going to teach you like techniques to help you with that. And if you get a great response, like techniques to like, cool, we're on our way. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Cool. Oh, and in that last one, I'll teach you like some ways to like really shift your mind frame if you're coming up against a lot of resistance from people. Because this is the other thing, is like we can't gloss over the fact that if something's been a pattern for you and people are used to A, borrowing money off you and you saying yes, or B, you just taking like their offloaded work all the time, having their kids like doing whatever, they are going to get shitty when there's a new version of you. And so, like, yeah, being comfortable with that resistance that people might give you.
Yeah, that sounds really good.
Cool. Thank you. Any other questions? No? Okay. Thank you guys so much for joining. I've really enjoyed this class. And yeah, I'd love to see you on to the next workshops. I'll send out the recording today. Um, and yeah, if you join, that's cool. And if you don't, I hope that you got something great out of this session. Cool. I'll just say a closing karakia. Kia whakairea te tapu, kia wātea ai te ara. Kia turiki whakataha ai. Kia turiki whakataha ai. Haumie huie tā kie. Thank you so much, guys.